Order. I'm going to call the roll.
Director Daddy,
Here.
Director Finch,
Here.
Director Thielke,
Here.
Director Whitman, Chair Hages.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, director announcements. Peter.
No action for today.
Jim.
Ohio Water Conservation District did not meet, but Emily and I did meet with Supervisor Levere out at the weir on San Antonio Creek and talked about the state of the diversion in regards to its physical state and in regards to the district and LAFCO, and brought him up to speed. He thought it had worked great over the winter. We gave him a different viewpoint.
Okay, Bob.
Nothing from the facility, community district.
Just update on Lake Casitas. It's 172,000 acre feet plus, 72%, and still coming up.
Ooh.
And the latest weather forecast, I heard there could be 1 to 2 inches of rain next week. So I don't know. We're all kind of tired of it, to tell you the truth.
One more to knock the oak pollen out of the tree
Yeah.
and get the stuff out, the pollen down, and I'll be good.
Yeah. The other thing, just found out just a couple hours ago that the state approved Upper Ventura River GSP along with 11 other GSPs, and it comes with volumes of narrative and 4 recommended action items that they want additional work done. So we were not on the list. So I don't know where we're gonna.
So would we want them to wait for about 2 or 3 years so they can beat everybody up and be tired and maybe not take us on?
No, they have to get back to us by January of 2024. No, I don't know what happens to them if they don't. Probably nothing. Okay, general manager comments. Julia.
That's me.
Welcome
Hi.
here.
I have a list. This is what I do. I make lists and then I cross things off. Last week, DWR hosted a webinar for groundwater management agencies and offered actually they have a lot of assistance available for implementing GSPs. So I'm going to dig into that a little bit more and maybe take advantage of it. They have technical assistance. They have a groundwater accounting platform software that they're pilot testing. They have outreach facilitators in the event we need such a thing. So it was really informative. I'm getting myself back up to speed in the Sigma world. So that was a worthwhile effort, I think, to participate in that. As I've been getting into things over the last few weeks, I'm developing lists of things to tackle, and I started kind of a draft work plan for things that I want to tackle in this 6-month, period. I guess it's down to 5 months now. But I want to present that to you maybe at next month's meeting for you to help me prioritize what you think I should be tackling, between now and the end of the year. So as things pop into my head, I'm adding them to that list, and then maybe we can review it next month. And if you have anything you already want me to add to the list, feel free to shoot me a note or send it to Richard, and I'll start adding to the list. Keep in mind, it's a few months. It's my short-term plan.
Chair, there is one thing I failed to say. I have had some people say, when you talk about DWR and Sigma and this, would you explain or say what it is. We have a lot of people listen to the alphabet soup. It just goes right over their head and we lose them. So, I mean, we don't have to do it all the time. But I mean, if we would just explain what, GSP is once, or this is maybe one time in a conversation, they could track
Sure.
with us.
Yeah, so SIGMA is the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, and the GSP is our Groundwater Sustainability Plan. And there is a lot of alphabet soup in my world.
A lot.
And there's a lot of it. So I'm usually better at explaining it ahead of time, depending on, who the audience is. Let's see, well, I did send off the consolidated comments to LAFCO on the municipal service review on the 14th, so that's in their hands now to make revisions and update. They are still waiting for some data from us, like meeting minutes and things like that, to finalize it. So we're working on a plan to get those together. I think next month also, I saw that there needs to be, I think, a banking resolution for who has signing authority over at Bank of the Sierra. I don't know if there's a current one or not for,
There is,
All
but
these-
Andy,
I think Andy needs to be
he's not on the
added,
list,
and we
yeah.
need to take John off.
Yes.
And then add me, I think, so
Well, I don't know if John is on.
the resolution I saw he
Okay.
was, yeah,
We have to take Bill Wyrick off.
right. So I'll plan on getting that together for the next board meeting. And then the state controller annual report is due at the end of the month, but I don't think anyone was tasked with actually doing it. So I would probably struggle with trying to do it because I'm not a, financial person. I've had to deal with like FEMA software on benefit cost analysis. I could probably struggle my way through it. But I did talk with the auditor. She said she would be willing to do it, but she wouldn't be able to tackle it till the middle of June when she gets back from an extended vacation. So I'm in touch with the state controller's office to see if what are there penalties if we don't submit it, or can we just get a time extension or something like that. So that might be something I bring back next month. I think that's everything I wanted to cover. Unless there's any questions.
Welcome.
Thank you.
One of the action recommendations in Upper Ventura's GSP, Groundwater Sustainability Plan, was that they more aggressively seek financial assistance from the state to implement the GSP and technical assistance. So you might keep your eye open for that kind of stuff.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Jordan, basin report.
Basin status. Julia, if I
What,
may share a microphone on the green table.
what catchy title?
Can it be fuller than 100%?
You guys want to make one up right now?
Oh, you have the.
You're the water
vernacular.
guru,
All you have to do is 2 words. It's full.
Max.
So
Run it
we,
over.
so we think, and much like a drought, as it's been said, you don't realize when you're in one. You only realize when you look back and see you were. And the same kind of applies to a full basin here. 1978, we had our historic high based on what the county measured at the 5L8 well, and we've been measuring the 5L5. But, so that was kind of the full time period. But we've had artesian conditions periodically since that time. 83, 84, 85, 1991. We had the big ones in 93, 95, 98, 2005, and 2006, even though it was an average water year. It's hindsight that is really so clear when it comes to this sort of thing. But nevertheless, we will say peak performance, Ojai Basin conditions, early spring 2023. This really boils down to the real massive rainfall that we've all had, over 70 inches on the ridge tops and over 40 inches on the valley floor. But at the same time, we've kind of had the driest April on record, right? I mean, how many drops of rain have fallen here in April? It's a tie for worst, driest month of April in history at 0. with several other months and several other years before. Now, if we get some rain next week, that's welcome, but it really begs the question. The creeks are still flowing, and the wells are still flowing artesian. And does that mean we're full? And what we kind of look at is how the basin has responded. Yeah, surface waters are continuously flowing since February. We had a pretty dry February by this year's standards, not as dry as April, but still drier. So it allowed things to recede to some degree. But based on our data collections, we probably hit full at around April 13th. Now, is that a historic high or is it truly full? Only time will tell. When we reach the carrying capacity in any statistical analysis, the top of that S-curve, you just don't have any room for anything more. And we really don't have room for much more of significance. There's just no more massive amount of space within the basin for things to go. But that is said with nuances. What we did at the Key Well was, in addition to the deep data logger we have recording the longer term data sets, we put a higher frequency logger in at only 60 feet below ground surface, and it recorded the top of that curve. And this is just that past month. So this is literally March 27th to today. So you're looking at a 31-day period of record here. And the first half of the rainbow is when we're starting to potentially not to really run out of room at the top of that curve. And it's dry enough to where this well was pumped right around the peak of that graph. And other wells were starting to pump as well. So the large drawdown that you see, the shift downward in that blue line, which represents water levels, it goes down about 2 feet when they pump that particular well. We know it's that well because the temperature, which is the red line, also has a change at the same time. When the other wells are pumping, that's the more sawtooth pattern. There are other wells that influence this particular well, but we don't see the temperature change, so we don't see that red line change. So we're starting to see that decline since that April 13th high. Now, on the longer term, this is the thing of beauty. We're above that 50-foot line, which puts us into historic high range with years like 2005, 1995, 1993, even 1998 wasn't this high. But that was pretty buku water that year too. The beauty of it is that we have these data to the hour from these wells, as opposed to hoping that someone collected a water level at the right time when it was peaking in the preceding years. So really since the 2013 time, when we've had this logger in this well, or a logger in this well, it's contributed to this data set, and we really know when those peaks are occurring. We also know that things have started going south again. So today's measurement of 40.1 feet, we can say it's come down 3 feet since the peak of 37.78 feet. Now, I call it 99.9% capacity, or 79,200 based on or 99% capacity, based on 80,000 acre foot total basin capacity. Of course, that'd be higher if it was 99.9, but we really don't know if we were at the 100. And part of that has to do with this is just one well. Some of the other wells where we have the loggers present, they're flowing artesian now. And it's a physical constraint to be able to get a logger back down a well that's flowing up at you at 30 gallons a minute, even if you can pull it out and get the data. You want to get it down to the same depth and have a consistent record. So Topa Topa Ranch, well number 5, and the Lago Marcino well, those wells, we're going to wait until things calm down a little bit and the groundwater levels recede a little bit before we collect those data. And again, hindcast, were we full? Were we at 100% this year? Over on the perch system, or the SWESI, there's another alphabet soup acronym for you, but we call it the SWESI. It's the southwestern uppermost saturated zone in this basin. We've had the graces of Ojai Valley Sanitary District allow us to monitor some of the water levels in a number of their monitoring wells on the western side in the city. Now, these were put in to help them address the sewer groundwater line interfaces and how one would affect the other, but it's a great data point for us to collect data. So in the past year, we had pretty dry conditions or low water levels, relatively stable since August up till about December, and then come the end of December, the water levels in this perch system really start peaking as the rain cumulatively builds up in the perched aquifer system, or the SWESI. And you can see it peaking really there again at just the end of March. It's a little bit earlier than the main part of the basin because this part of the basin responds much more rapidly to precipitation and discharge. So you see that those sort of the woodpecker head profile of several peaks as we were still getting quite a bit of rain in March with the weekly storms, it seems. So a peak and then a recession, peak recession, peak recession, peak recession, and finally the April longer term recession that we see. Still plenty of water in that perch system and plenty of water feeding San Antonio Creek from it.
Where's that well located, Jordan?
Well, glad you asked.
Okay.
Here's a map. So it might be kind of hard to see, so let me zoom in. That OVSD number 11 is up there on the north side, and these are the 4 OVSD monitoring wells that we monitor with high-frequency data logging equipment. We also monitor the South Central Depth Discrete Monitoring Well. That's the South Central DDMW there at the lower portion. So each of these starred locations are where we have loggers in the western side of the basin. And the importance of this is that we can take that peak from March 2023 and put an elevation on those, and now we have a groundwater contour map of water flowing at its peak in the perched or SWESI system. And you can see it really flowing south and east towards San Antonio Creek and Montgomery Creek. It's a little bit different story in the main aquifer, in the main portion of the basin, where you have the pumping depressions associated with the Ojai Mutual and San Antonio Creek well fields. But that's another story for another day. In this case, it just gives you a snapshot of where we are monitoring the perch system and where we see that peak and how we have this, the importance of that perch system, because it's really the one that seems to be interfacing with San Antonio Creek much more readily and responsively. So very good information, very good data. You can see that this is just the western portion, something that could be on the, I think it is part of the groundwater sustainability plan, is further easterly monitoring points that would monitor the perch system east of San Antonio Creek. So we really don't have any of those. There just weren't any wells available. And now we can look that direction for depth discrete monitoring wells in the central and southeastern part of the basin to extend these contours out and have them make more sense. The point is that because we see different operations here at play, there's an importance in managing the surface water resource by managing the perched aquifer system. All right, well, how does that water get there? We measure the surface water inflows at a number of tributaries to the basin and the major outflow points at San Antonio Creek and Montgomery or Stewart Creek. And on 6th of March 2023, we mentioned this at the last meeting, Gridley 31 CFS, Senior Canyon 38, Thatcher 24, Reeves 11 CFS, so a total input of 104 CFS. Now what I recognize that this ignores is the Stewart Canyon side, which is a significant tributary area, but it's only to the western side. So for the focus of the main aquifer recharge, we're seeing 104 CFS coming in. The outflow at Montgomery was 8 CFS, and the outflow at San Antonio Creek was 17 CFS. We've also realized that there was a downed tree just upstream from this that may have been inhibiting some of that flow and potentially diverting it to another channel that we didn't see on the date of that reconnaissance. But if we fast forward, the net recharge snapshot on March 6th was 84 CFS. That's a lot of water going into the basin. Now, month and a half later, April 20th, 2023, we do the same kind of reconnaissance. Gridley, 12 CFS. Senior Canyon, about 14. Thatcher, about 12. Reeves, about 5. The outflow at Montgomery is 4 CFS. And surface flow out of San Antonio Creek was 51 CFS. That's a lot more than we had. We're closer to the peak. We're higher elevations, certainly in the in the perch system there as well. And what this ignored was the approximate 12 CFS that, based on county gauges, were coming out of the Stewart and Fox canyons at about that date. Now, the county gauges we can take with a grain of salt because they're intended for flood control and flood alert awareness and hazards. But really, ultimately, what we're seeing is when the basin's full, the net recharge is zero.
Yeah.
It's a full bathtub, the full system. You've got inflow equaling outflow, or pretty close to it. And we'll continue to modify this and continue to monitor this on a monthly basis at least. During this dynamic time, we've done it a bit more than monthly, as you can see, but I think it's very valuable data and absolutely critical as part of the GSP. One of the key things is that each of these are surface flows. At almost all of them, there is some component of subsurface flow in saturated alluvium that's just in that known and defined channel where these systems come into the basin. So there could be a little bit more coming in or more coming out, that sort of thing. But this gives us an idea about what is happening at ground surface. After all, that's what the arroyo chub swim in, right? Got to protect them. All right, so there's the long list, just for information. This is the long list showing what the flows we've measured on the outflow since 2019 when we started doing this on a monthly basis. We've had flows as low as 0.07, 0.08, barely a trickle of 5 to 10 gallons per minute going through San Antonio Creek's main channel and nothing coming out of Montgomery Creek. That 50.69 that we measured on the 20th of April is a effectively historic high that we've seen. Flows were certainly higher. These are snapshots on time, not on fully continuous recorded data sets. Now, once the receding limb of the hydrograph attenuates a bit more, we'll replace our logger in San Antonio Creek to see that on a more continuous basis. But we've already lost one and they're only $700 each. So, somewhere it's floating downstream or sunk downstream or maybe even in the ocean. They get wiped out pretty quick if we don't anchor them in place. And it's really tough to anchor them in the substrate of an alluvium of San Antonio Creek when you've got 10,000 CFS flowing over it. So it certainly scoured those away. We also like sharing this graph. We'll wrap with this because it shows where over the past 7 years, effectively, since 2017 at least, where we have high rainfall on the top purple chart. Then the main chart shows elevations and surface flows and key well monitoring point hydrographs. The takeaway from this is just really how high up the water levels are over this recent period of record. And in fact, coming up close to 150 feet of rise at the Elrod well in this year alone, this water year alone. We've had rates in excess of 2 feet per day of rise. And we've anchored this, of course, with not just the automated monitoring data, but also manual measurements that we've been taking frequently just to be sure. As that 10-year-old logger is getting full and the battery may be on its way out, we may need to replace that one. We'll probably just shift the one that we have at the shallow level down into the deeper zone again to continue this monitoring period. The pink bar graphs, those are from the county at San Antonio Creek at downstream at Old Creek Road Bridge. So we don't necessarily have those in play yet for 2023. What's interesting is that we didn't really see much continuous across the basin flow in 2021, but there was quite a bit of flow at that point in San Antonio Creek, largely because it's coming from the perched aquifer system and others that are downstream as well within that watershed. So always fun to share this and happy to field any questions.
Questions? I only have one. It'd be interesting as we go forward to compare the outflow from the basin with the gauges down at Highway 33 and see how much contribution comes from the lower portion of the San Antonio.
Yeah, and that's exactly what that graph intends to do. Let's see if I go back to it. Because that pink bar chart is effectively the CFS flowing at, let's see if that goes back up there. So all the pink portions of the bar chart, that is the flow going basically into the Upper Ventura River groundwater basin. And by comparison, our CFS flowing out of the basin are these X's. So the delta between the two is what's coming in from areas outside of Ojai, of the Ojai Basin.
And they don't have good low flow measurement there.
They don't know. But once the county reviews it and it goes from being preliminary flood hazard based data from the radar gauges to a true rating shifted curve, I think what they publish is much more accurate.
All the turbidity that's at the 33 comes from Lions Creek. It's crystal clear above Lions Creek, and then it's not after it. Or turbidity the cloudiness.
Right, and turbidity that's a very good definition.
I mean,
Yeah.
because it is clear at Camp Comfort, and then when you look at it down at that bridge that goes up to the Avocados, it's not. And for some days, I think there were landslides. It was just brown after
Right.
that point.
And what's interesting is if you go into Upper Ojai and look at Lion Creek at the 150 there, it's crystal clear also.
And the landslides are like
Between the two.
probably, yeah, in the last mile probably.
Yeah.
It's when it comes through that
Yeah.
part.
Okay. The next item is public comments on any item not on the agenda today. Do we have any comments from the public on items not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to action items. 7A, it's a well permit application. Julia.
All right, so this application was submitted for a new well at 904 Creek Road. They are looking for, it's a domestic well, 1.9 acre feet per year of the anticipated pumping. So it's exempt from the GSP requirements to do an analysis of the impacts and make sure it's not detrimental to the basin. So it's almost like a ministerial approval, I would say. I'm still getting familiar with the process to go through well permit applications and present them to you and all the paperwork that's involved. It looked like a resolution needed to be passed, which is attached to your agenda package, as well as the application itself. There's a letter that would go to the owner telling them what all the requirements are, what they have to notify us, they have to give us the ability to come and observe the well drilling. I attached the forms that they're gonna need to submit once it's drilled, so it's kind of a package, really, to give back to the property owner.
Any questions with the board?
Yeah, about 30.
30?
And I'm not sure this is the time. The applicant's come back a couple of times. And this isn't about the applicant, it's about our process. So when I take a look at our application, they seem to be missing half the puzzle parts. We state in here that if you have an existing, that it's a replacement. We state if you have an existing well, then you're gonna need to remove that in this. We don't have anything that says, and then we say legally permitted well. So we're not asking for documentation if the well that's existing was ever legally permitted. We're not asking when it's gonna be removed. We're not asking if it is filed with the health department that it has been properly removed. And I can go on with about 20 of those. And we haven't done it with anybody else. So rather than go through this whole litany of things that I think are missing on our application, If the board would concur with me, what I'd like to do is submit a list to Julia, and then she can do what she can do for the Brown Act stuff, so we don't have a serial meeting. I just think that we don't ask what kind of meter they're gonna put on. We don't ask when they're gonna put it on. We don't ask 20 questions that are missing from our applications. And again, I don't want to
noticed
hold
that
up.
about the application too. There are things
Yeah.
that I wish it had, information I wish it had
Right.
on.
And so I don't want to hold up the applicant, because we've never done this in 31 years, ask the questions we need to ask. And so I would like us to consider modification
Sure.
of our process and the application, information, and I could
All right.
get that to you. Is that okay with everybody? Or, because I don't want to spend an hour
We
going
don't,
through
we
this.
appreciate that, yeah.
Good.
Any other comments by the board?
So I'm a little confused. Are you asking that we postpone this one?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm asking that we've never postponed one because we've never had this information. And I don't want to postpone this one, but I do want us to go to back and have an agenda
future
item
process.
at some time that we expand the process and we ask the relevant questions.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have any comments?
No, that all sounds correct to me.
All right. Any comments by the public? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the
I
resolution.
make a motion, we approve.
Second.
Call the roll.
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Seelke?
Yes.
Chair Hages?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is financial reports.
Flip over to those.
And I'm sorry you had to come back for just that so many times.
Thanks. So, just so you know, I'm gonna put a memo on top of every agenda item, so you'll see there's memos in here now. The bookkeeper provided the financial reports for February and March, so that's what's in front of you, is to kind of get both of those approved at the same time. Just happy, if there's any questions, let me know.
Do we have any idea on what major expenses we're going to incur over the next 6 months or so?
Jordan?
Give her a month.
I think since the GSP is done, if we do get any comments back from DWR in the next 6 months, there might be comments to address that we'll have to have DUDEC, help us address. That's the most major one that I can see right now.
And we have the audit.
The audit is still hanging out there. We need audits for a few years, actually.
Yeah.
So we'll have to address that. And then the state controller report.
Okay.
Chair, question on that same subject. Do we have a lot hanging out with DUDEC that we need to continue with, or are we kind of slowed down with that
We have,
process?
we have a contract for them to do our annual report next
And
next
to
year.
write some grants?
They're working on the grants. They've already submitted them, so we just
Okay.
have to wait to see what it comes
Because that
back.
kind of looked like that was the biggest item that we had in the
Yeah.
budget, was them. And I was just wondering how long that was gonna
Now,
sustain.
we have a contract with them to, time and material if anything comes up, but there's no project they're working on. We're just waiting on the state right now.
Correct.
Okay, and on that note, it appears to me that 100% of the wells are active and everybody can draw, and everybody can draw water for quite a sustained period of time. Are we looking at what our budget is going to be? Forget that. Are we looking at what our income is going to be 6 months from now? Because I think it's going to be tremendously diminished.
Well, actually, it's,
6 months from now, it'll be the same as a year ago.
Why?
Yeah.
Why would it be?
Your issue is gonna be this first quarter,
Yeah. It'll be zero.
you'll have,
It was a,
you'll have wellhead only.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
but they're already starting to pump.
Oh, are they pumping
Yeah.
already?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So let's see. Yeah, so I would guess what I call second quarter, it's not our second quarter.
Yeah.
But true calendar year second quarter will probably be down by 20-ish% over previous year. And then third quarter, I would expect
Yeah.
just kind of average.
Okay.
Yeah, the dry April had a pretty big impact,
Yeah, no.
so. But I do think on the list of things that Julia's gonna have to do is we're gonna have to take a look at, long-term budget and see if we need to do a rate adjustment.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we won't know very much until we hear from the state, but not much we can do about that. Any other comments or questions on the financial reports? Any public comments or questions?
No, eventually I'd like to learn what JUDEC is doing for us. But we can sidebar that.
All right.
What consultants do.
We mostly keep,
Bills, that's what they do. They send bills.
yeah.
It is.
What we do is keep the state from coming in here and dictating what we're gonna do with our groundwater. That's pretty much what we do.
This,
Don't pay anything to do that.
this sta-
That seems expensive.
Who's our guest?
Shall I introduce myself?
Sure.
Oh, yes, please. Yeah.
So hi, my name is Walter Peterson of the Owner Home.
Yeah, because the people at home can't hear you unless we're
Yeah.
live.
Which is my chocolate.
He's gonna put his makeup on now.
Where's the camera at?
Behind you.
Oh, behind me. All right, very good. So hello, my name is Walter Peterson. I've been living here in Ojai for about 6 years. I'm a transplant from Carpinteria. I have a couple different jobs. I actually work at a company in Goleta called Soil Moisture Equipment Corporation. And I also am working on the side, selling and working in irrigation consulting. Anyways, so I wanted to meet the board and find out what we're doing here. And I'm considering buying maybe some tangerine property here in town. So water's a big topic, always. And I've just learned that there's a special basin for our area. And I've read through your web pages, and I'm astounded at how wonderful it is. You guys have a very special cutout and carve out, if you will. You have a GSP in place and things like that. This is all great. Anyhow, so I just came to see how the wheels turn here.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I have a motion to accept the financial reports for February and March?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Thielke?
Yes.
Chair Hages?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is to approve our new general manager to attend a Sigma workshop in June. And I think it would be a good opportunity for her to meet some of the state people up there, particularly people who may be involved in helping us finance some of this stuff.
So moved.
Second.
Motion.
You have a second?
Second.
All right, call the roll?
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Thielke?
Yes.
And Chair Hages?
Yes.
Thank you.
And make sure, Julia, you enjoy that conflict resolution class the most. Because it's right here, in detail. And get everybody's business card, because it says if you need help, the cavalry will come.
Yeah.
Okay, the next four items are discussion items for well permit applications, some of which have been in place for quite some time, but they ran into the moratorium and the drought and other things. So, Julia, you want to give us a
Sure.
synopsis of this?
I'll try. again, I'm getting familiar with the process now. These have, Roberta forwarded these to me that they've kind of been out there and no action had been taken on them. So I wasn't prepared to move forward with them until we had a discussion here, because I don't know, it didn't look like you had seen these before on a previous agenda, so I wanted to throw them out there, basically, and see what kind of feedback you guys had. The first one, Birnbaum, is a new well. This one does have, because of the amount of 4 acre-feet per year, they're required to do this analysis, which was done by Kier Groundwater and is attached to the package, to show that, again, there's going to be no detriment to the basin. That's kind of in the summary page of the Kier report. And then there's a replacement well, which I would call, let's call it the Three Oaks LLC, which is
No, we're on a different
a different one,
application.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
can-
Do you want
can-
to talk about the first one
Yeah,
first?
I want to talk
Okay.
about the first one first. So I see we've got 9 acres. This is on the 4274 Thatcher Road.
Which I realize is a mailing address and not necessarily the property address, so that's another thing I want to change on the
Change on
application.
our
Yes.
Thank you.
But there's the assessor parcel number there, and there's a map attached that looks like it's on Thatcher Road.
Yeah.
Maybe it is the same address.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it is.
it does look like it is, yeah.
Okay, and is this the same one that's got KG on it?
Yes.
Yes, that's the report that goes with it.
Okay, well, I don't want to be a jerk about this, but, I couldn't get any of the numbers to add up. Actually, I couldn't get the numbers to add up when the new number for most people is going to be 1.9 acre feet. And we'll talk about how that gets monitored, not in conjunction with this. So when I see the quantity they're going to use and what they're going to use it on, and this is 4 acre feet, how do we monitor that? Here's what I know. I'm an insurance agent. And when somebody gets a leak, you can't tell how much water there is. But I go to the Casitas meetings, and somebody gets a leak at the Casitas meeting, and I see people in there with horrific bills where they're asking for forgiveness because just this one little pipe leaked this enormous amount of water. And so when somebody applies for 4 acre feet, not that they're wrong or they're going to take 40 or whatever, how do we know? We don't have to.
With their
well,
quarterly
yeah, but-
statements,
Are we requiring meters to go in on these now?
yes, every well
Okay.
requires a meter.
The other thing is what I thought I read in here. I'm not sure which sheet of paper. I took a look at how much time they were going to use it. And the 4 acre feet. And it looked like, based on the 1 hour a day, they're about 1.6 acre feet a year, based on what they stated, which would put them under the 2 acre feet. And so I'm wondering if I've looked at a wrong sheet here, because it doesn't seem that the numbers add. At least that's what I did a few hours ago when I looked at it. And again, I can get back to you on that, Julia, and send you the page and highlight it.
Okay, I'm trying to find that,
Okay.
what you're referring to.
Well, what they're referring to is that they're going to have the water on for, 1 hour a day. We're going to draw this, we're going to draw that, the different ones. And I'm just wondering how they add up, that's all. It just struck me with this one that they would have been under the 2 acre feet. And they could have saved themselves a lot of problems. But I'll let it go till I can find the page and highlight it.
Well,
Okay.
Based on their application, I mean, they may be right, but they asked for 4, right?
No, I got that. And so what I want to know is, what's the difference? Is there, besides, is there a permit fee? Is there application fee?
They have to go through this
It's a
lengthy
different,
process.
it's a different
yeah.
process. And so why would somebody do that? Is there a penalty? If you say I'm gonna use 1.9 or 2, and then they end up turning in their water receipts and they end up 4?
No.
Is there, okay, so what did I miss?
There's
so
no
the di-
way to police it, honestly. If someone asks for 1.9 and then we get their quarterly statements and over the course of the year and they end up using 10, we don't necessarily can go back and have them do this analysis.
There's a difference. I think the 4, but when you're under the 2, that's where they trying to slip under 1. When they state 4, you see, I go at it a different way. On 9 irrigated acres,
Yeah,
you're gonna be 18 plus on an average year. You know, you're gonna be 20 acre feet on 9 acres, just, you know, call it 2.1 or 2 if you're even just barely watering them. So I go at it differently. So, you know, to me, it says that they're gonna use casitas or something.
Even with the micro sprinklers?
Yeah.
Okay.
is this in Senior Canyon?
In the Senior Canyon Serv, if the 4274 Thatcher Road, if that's where the drilling point,
It
that's
looks like
Senior Canyon surface area, yeah.
So they probably do have a
They
connection
probably have a
with
residential
Casitas.
meter. And we haven't given out any ag meters in 15 years, any new ones, so.
Again, I'm kind of lost. What's the point of the
I think
process
Jim
then?
thinks they're underestimating how much they're gonna use, and you think they're overestimating how much they're
Well,
gonna use.
and what I'm saying is, if there's no penalty and there's no surcharge, and there's no other stuff, what are we doing with this process? Trying to guess what they're doing. There's no extra cost.
What
There's no
happens if
extra.
they pump 10
So I
acre
guess-
feet?
Okay, and what
Right.
does happen if they,
Yeah.
So that where in just thinking ahead, and we've got the letterhead person present, not the right,
And the author.
and the author, is
Oh.
I guess it could go towards what the geologist's opinion is of detrimental effect, because, you know, 4, I could sign that letter. 4 is not gonna be detrimental without a geology degree. But when you get to 20 odd acre feet, then that's a real, not de minimis number. So I think that, maybe that is, because 4 and 20, I think dollar-wise, is the same. It just would go to how the geologist letter, you know, if I were in here asking for one at 20 and my real intent was 75, it's a magnitude difference. So for the geologist letter, it might be different.
and I think you're right, and I'm very concerned that this needs to be tightened up for this reason. I found what I was looking for on the front page,
Okay.
bottom of the very last paragraph.
Mine go.
Extraction is planned to be around 4 acre feet for primary agriculture. The optimal rate anticipated to be 50 gallons per minute for 1 hour. Well, that's 550,000 gallons. That's about 6-7 tenths of 2 at 1 acre plus an acre, 1.7 acre feet. And they're asking for 4. And so I'm just kind of wondering, you know, when 2 acre feet is, 652,000, why? I'm not opposed to what we're doing. It's just what we're doing should have a reason,
Oh, I agree.
and it should have cost and consequences and benefits, and I don't see any of this.
Well, so consequences, if it was, say it was an adjudicated basin and everyone had an allocation, there would be consequences because they'd be going over.
Because he'd only get 4
Allocation.
and he'd need 20.
Right. That's when there's consequences.
very
But
good.
it's a non-adjudicated basin and nobody has an allocation.
Right.
So there aren't any.
Right.
I think the
I think the key, go ahead.
I mean, the big issue is if it's under 2, they don't have to go through the gauntlet and spend all that money. So, you know, if at some point they go over 2, then they have to go through the process. If they want to continue to do that, that would be one remedy. But other than that, I think the bigger issue for us is are these new plantings, or is this just trying to get away from buying water from Senior Canyon or Casitas to irrigate existing agriculture?
I mean, based on the aerial photo that they provided, it looks like they would be new. There's, hardly anything there. There's a few trees.
That should be on the
Plant.
that should be on the application.
Plant more.
Is this new? Right?
New plantings.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in doing the analysis of its existing planting, the impact is pretty much zero. But if it's new planting, then that brings up another question. I mean, not today necessarily, basin's full. But at some point, if we have to deal with that, we should have policy in place to address it. So you don't have to do that this week, but
By tomorrow?
I know. But I, on this one, I would suggest they put down 4. 2 is the threshold, so they're gonna have to go through the gauntlet of satisfying the GSP or modify their application.
I mean, whether they put 4 or 10 or 20, anything over 2,
Right.
they'd have to do that
The same
evaluation.
thing.
But you're the opposite. You think it's less than 2.
Well, no, I'm stating just a mathematic thing. That says 50 gallons a minute for 1 hour a day is like 552,000,
Hour a day.
gallons, which is 1.7 acre feet a year. So if that's what they were really gonna use, they wouldn't have to go through this process. And I'm saying, why go through the process when you're gonna use well under half? You state you're gonna use under half of what you're asking for. That's all. I just don't understand the
It's
purpose.
just bad math, I think.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Well,
And I can speak to some of this, and, it kind of begs for us the question of, as consultants to various property owners in the basin, but also consultants to the OBGMA, on some of these items, we might need to recuse ourselves from these discussions.
Right,
And in some cases, it's, obviously, Mr. Becker, who was online, he might be back, wrote this letter. Obviously, on our letterhead, he's an employee of Care Groundwater. But my involvement was more on the conceptual level of what's realistic about getting from a well in that area. It's more likely you're gonna get 50 gallons a minute than 200. And 50 is probably a stretch. You might be looking at 20 in times when it's dry, and all you're getting is bedrock from a well like this. So that's one issue. The other is the client said, we're looking at 4 acre feet.
Right.
That came from them.
I think you have to,
And it could be an offset of, well, right now we've got young trees and we're getting 12 acre feet per year from Casitas. We kind of want to have a buffer and maybe not go into that second tier of payment or whatever that number may have been. And I'm speaking generally because that's really, I think, where this discussion should be. Whether or not this gets approved today or tomorrow or next month or next year, it's the question is, it's science, but it's also geology and hydrology, and it's an art at the same time. And someone is telling us they're looking at getting 4 acre feet per year. That's a put in there. That comes down to, well, maybe an hour plus or minus, maybe 50 gallons a minute. We don't know till the well is drilled. And that's why all of these permit applications should be uniform to the point of really a good check-the-box exercise to, does it meet these ministerial conditions? And if there's any kind of discretionary action or subjective evaluation, that it is done by a professional that's licensed in the field. We are, so is Dudek, they just cost 10 times as much to do this exact same thing. And rather than having the OBGMA foot that bill and have Dudek do it like they did on the last one, we offer the client, we'll do it, it's a $1,200 level of effort, you get this letter.
So just to be clear, if we had Dudek do it, the applicant would still have to pay for it. We would get a deposit from the applicant to pay for Dudek's time,
No, they'd pay direct.
right? Or they'd hire
They'd
them.
hire it direct.
They'd hire Dudek directly? Is that how we do it? Okay.
That's what I've had to do in United. I've had to hire the geologist directly.
Okay. Because I think there was also a piece I saw where we would want Dudek to put it in the model as well, so we're keeping track of all of these, I thought, because they maintain the model.
Yeah, and that's where the GSP compliance point comes in.
Right.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
you know, how does it, you know, like Jim said, his stamp can tell you 4 acre feet's not gonna do anything to the basin. And I agree, we have, and Dudek putting that into a model is
Right.
beyond the levels of error of the model.
Right.
Exactly, yes, agreed. But it's more just keeping track.
Yeah.
So, and I think that, Bob, the key thing here is, you know, we have to look at it, we are not adjudicated, and only from the responsibility of Sigma, because, you know, it is part of the property right under the grant.
Sure it is.
So you know, there's probably some ranges now that, you know, I'd never thought about this until now, but maybe there ought to be a, you know, 0 to 1.99 box, a 2 to 10 box, which is pretty much that. Geologists can darn near stamp it with their eyes closed, as long as it's not. And then you know,
Greater than 10.
greater than 10, and then maybe even greater than
50.
And that's
50 or 100.
That's like the Santa Barbara County water well permit application.
Is it?
It has a less than 2, it has a 2 to 10.
Okay.
And it has an 11 or greater, and it has an on-property use only, or export potential.
You know what? Do you have a copy of that? Could you get it
Maybe
to?
yourself a note, yeah.
Well, you know, we've been messing around with these wells for a long time, on and off. And it seems like, you know, the other basins must you know, have the same kinds of questions and same kind of challenges. But other basins probably have all this stuff already done. So why don't would it make sense to take a look at what Santa Barbara's doing, take a look at, you know, other basins, and maybe they've already done this and we wouldn't have to rediscover the wheel.
I like
And maybe
that idea.
after your conference, you'll.
I was
ask
just gonna say
exactly
that.
and come
I don't
back
mind
to the
stealing from
board
other people
with
if they've got
brand
it
new
figured out.
Well permit application for the OGBMA.
Yes.
Well, if you're going to do that, I'd like you to do like to like. So if you're going to do that, I would not want to compare us to an adjudicated basin.
Agreed, yeah.
They're going to, that's going to be a zebra and a horse.
It's-
Look the same, but I want to make sure it's non-adjudicated.
Okay, but there's individual ones.
1, 2, and then more on the way, that are
All right.
adjudicated. But the county, the application to the county that has that reference of less than 2, 2 to 10,
Okay.
greater than 10, is county-wide and is applicable to areas outside of groundwater basins altogether.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to look into that.
Okay.
I also don't mind calling the applicant and asking them for some clarification about what, you know, if they've thought that through, what they're requesting.
Yeah, I would have taken the easy way out and I would have put 199 and been done, because he's only going to use 17. So,
Yeah.
all right.
I think he's going to use more like 20.
I do too.
Well, I'm looking
Yeah.
at what they wrote down.
I feel like there's a friendly wager we need to.
Jim, just to reiterate what Jim said, you know, an acre of citrus on the low end takes a little more than 2 acre feet a year. Used to be 3 was accepted, 3 acre feet. So if you're asking for 4 acre feet of water, that's 2 acres tops, 2 acres of new planting. So that's the math involved.
Not
here.
12
No.
and not 9.
Do you feel it would be important to know if they have a domestic well, like you're saying, or a connection to an outside agency as part of their application?
I think it'd be helpful to know if this is a supplemental supply or if they
Yeah.
have backup supplies.
Okay.
Because that would make, it would make a lot more sense with what Jordan said. If they can't get much more than 50 gallons a minute, then they're not going to be irrigating 10 acres of citrus.
And I would ask this, now that I'm wigging out here, I wanted to have something in conjunction with that, which was, no, moment passed. I'll catch up with it.
Okay? Does anyone online have any comments or questions? Mr. Becker?
I think he's driving around the Napa Sonoma area as we speak, going from well to well, very multi-property aquifer test that we're doing. So I think he's going in and out of reception.
Okay.
Clicker on and off the screen.
I thought you were gonna say he was sampling water from grapes.
Julia, I did get that thought.
Okay.
Later.
In a bunch of the previous information, it says replacement wells. You're going to put in a well, you're going to take a well out. The chair brought something out that I hadn't thought of when he said a domestic well. So do they have a domestic well as supplemental?
Yep.
Under the conditions I read, can you keep that domestic well and then add a new well? See, the information in here and the definitions are pretty vague. You know, it'd be nice to kind of tighten this up, you know, not to go ahead and beat everybody up, but man, it'd be nice for the applicants if they knew exactly what the rules were, because I'm taking a look at, some of these things are like over 2 years old. That'd frustrate the hell out of me if I had to wait 2 years for a well.
Well, I think the thing that everyone has to understand is we do not regulate pumping. We don't
Right.
have any allocations. We don't do any of that. The primary purpose of this applicant being sent to us by the county, who is actually the permitting agency, is to allow us to add conditions to that, which one of the big conditions is metering. And they have to agree to metering, and they have to agree to pay the fees that go along with that. And now on top, and that's, at one time, that's pretty much all there was. I mean, we would ask them to allow us to observe the drilling and that sort of thing. But now we have this SGMA requirement that's on top of that, and that's where that 2 acre foot threshold comes in. That's a SGMA issue. So this is relatively new to us. I mean, we haven't had to do this before. And I think it would be good if, you know, we can come up with a way that administratively the staff can approve these small, less than 2 acre foot well applications that come through, and to approve those without going, I mean, they can give us the information, but the applicant doesn't have to wait for a board meeting once a month. And then the ones that require this new SGMA regulations, then they're going to have to go through this process and check all those 5 boxes that they have to check off, and have a geologist do that. So, and then once that's done, then staff can bring it to us for approval. So in this case, I would say the first applicant is going to have to go through that and clarify some of it, and then we can get a better application, so we get more information, so we don't have to keep going back and forth with the applicant. That would streamline it for everybody, I think.
Take a stack of flyers, and everybody you see at that convention, say, send me your rules, right?
I plan on doing a lot of networking.
But we primarily are gathering data. That's what we do. And the metering requirement helps us gather that data.
I think, Bob, it's important to remember, up until now, nobody cared. You know,
Yeah.
even in the United Basin, even in the basin that I farm in that's adjudicated, I've drilled wells and they don't ask how much I'm gonna pump. It's metered, that requirement is there, and other than that, you know, in the old way of thinking, it just goes to help your divisor in paying for it. The more they pump, the more you're bringing in and keeping the things down. In SGMA, it blends the dual mandate, so. Anyway,
Well, you do need some bumping estimates to determine if there's interference.
right,
that sort
and
of
I think that's where the Santa Barbara one, I might be
come in
willing,
handy.
I might go to one more 50 and over
Yeah.
check mark. But other than that, I think it nailed it.
Yeah. I think the other thing that the OBGMA can do in this permitting process is ensure that those wells that will be located over the southwestern uppermost saturated zone do seal off that zone.
Yeah.
That has the direct connectivity to San Antonio.
Yeah.
And I think that's the.
Oh, interesting, okay.
The Mertz Trust, one I think is located there, and then the other one, on Country Club would be in that zone as well. And I think it's incumbent upon us as scientists in the basin to continually update that boundary and that location.
Yeah.
Because this year we've certainly learned a lot about how that operates and how that response occurs. So I think updating the one that was in the GSP would be a key task for us to undertake in this summertime.
Okay.
Okay. Do
No.
you have some recommended language that we can put in the letter of requirements
Yes,
for those? Okay, if you could send me that.
I will.
That'd be
Yeah,
great.
I've sent it to John, and I think Roberta's seen it too, so
Okay.
we'll just forward that email along.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else on that one? You want to go to the next one?
I mean, I don't have an issue with anybody or what they're doing.
So-
Just the process and,
Right.
and how it folds together. We need a little bit better format.
So on 8B, it's going to require the geologist.
Well, but if you look, it was hard to find, but this one is a replacement well. And it shows it
couldn't
on
find
the,
it
on the
either.
map. I know, it took me, I'm like, I know I saw it somewhere.
Oh.
It's actually on the map where it says proposed replacement well.
So okay.
I'm
I
glad
had
we
it.
got the map rather than a place on the
Oh,
app.
yours is not, I don't know if you can read
So
it.
is that what the,
Yeah.
that white,
It's in, I don't know if you can see it because yours is in black and white.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
ink
that's
color.
it.
and so are they drilling,
In that well?
no, you can't drill in, but there's, it's an accepted radius that's published by the state that it has to be within that, even with it, if it's in the same APN, it doesn't matter. It's the radius to the existing well.
And that's what's not shown on here. Again, that's kind of,
Right.
like, I don't know where their existing well is. There's nowhere on the application to show the well number. There, information like that would be really helpful when you're evaluating this.
Yeah.
So, but again, it's a replacement well, 15 acre feet per year. They submitted the application in October of 2021. And as far as I know, there's no action been taken on it. So now you're making me question, like, is 15 acre feet a year enough for 30 acres of olives?
A
Well,
half an acre foot for olives.
If it's a replacement well,
If it's a replacement well?
Then
Doesn't
it's-
matter,
It
yeah.
doesn't matter, yeah.
Okay, okay.
I would suggest that, see if you can get a little bit more information that you need to demonstrate that this is something you could approve administratively.
Okay.
Anybody have any objections to that?
No? And is it brand new planting or are they just,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
cool?
Why don't you come up?
And actually, it hasn't been sitting on your desks for that long. It was,
Oh,
it
okay,
was just submitted.
okay,
Oh,
good.
okay.
We're looking at the
You have you
application
updated.
date.
Yeah, I don't want you guys
application.
to think it got overlooked or something. It didn't.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, there's a well right next to that.
Can you come up to the mic? People at home can't hear you.
I'm Michael Grasso. I've met some of you before. I'm a drilling contractor here in the Ojai Valley. My client has a well that's probably about 100 yards away from where the proposed replacement well is on that map.
Okay.
So this, and mine's in black and white, the existing well is there?
I can't really see what you're pointing at, but it's
It's almost in the southern,
It says, the label says proposed replacement well there.
Yeah, the mark on the application is for the replacement well, that's about 100 yards due west of the existing well.
Due
West.
west.
Uphill.
Doesn't look like there's even 100 yards.
Because there's no scale on this map.
Trust me.
You know, maybe it's
I believe you.
maybe it's 150 feet or something. It's kind of right there.
Any other questions? Again, does the board have any problem with
Ye-
Julia?
This one, I think, there is very specific, and Jordan can help me out with his other geologist locally, not Boyd. What's the guy's name down in? Anyway, he was working on one, and it's a very tight radius, like 50 feet or something. It's a very, from what I understand, it comes through the whole thing, that it's, because I wanted to move to where the electricity was better. And it was a very tight radius to the existing well where it was exempted. And I can't,
In the county moratorium for exemption, or?
no, I think it came from the state thing.
Of how close a replacement well could be
What was
to
considered replacement. It wasn't just the same APN, because I wanted to move.
So you mean if it's 100 feet away, it's considered new, not replacement
No,
because
like
it's outside?
something like within, they don't want it right there, so they do give you some radius, but this one is 1,200 feet from the main, whatever you call the main Edison lines. And I get this fluctuating power because I'm 1,200 feet away from the transmission lines, that's what. And so I wanted to move down to within, 150, 200 feet. It's a very long, skinny parcel. And that would have taken all new geology work. But if I went back to the back of the ranch, and this is all in United.
So the state ties the
Bundy.
data from the replacement to the new well, I think, don't they? Isn't that why they want that?
Yeah.
Yeah, they reference each
Is there a
other.
Bundy, Jordan, or?
Bondi?
Bondi.
Oh, Brian Bondi.
Brian, there you go. That's who it was.
I think the other pieces of information missing are, if it's a replacement well, what are they gonna do with the existing well? It's gonna be abandoned, they have to go through that process with the county to abandon it properly, and there's nothing on here that says
Yeah.
that. It could be in the requirements of the letter, but.
Let us see what the county's requirements are. 'cause I
It
don't
will be
think-
abandoned, but Ventura County will let you also keep it as a backup well should you choose to do that.
Okay, and then we would keep it registered and they'd be paying 2 wellhead charges.
In this
all that.
particular case, it's going to be abandoned.
It will be abandoned, okay. I feel like we need that on our application. It's not, it's
Yeah, there
not
was no
you.
place to.
It's-
Yeah,
I
put
know,
that.
it's like information, like if I keep calling and asking, I might as well just have it all on the application so they can give me all the information up front.
Yeah.
And so, Julia, when there's an abandoned well, the health department has certain requirements and priorities. And so, should we, whenever we abandon a well, should we be asking for that health department certificate?
I think that's
Or
up to
no?
the county to monitor that. I don't know
Okay.
if they let us know after
Yeah, it's a
the
permit you
fact.
obtain through watershed protection at Ventura County,
Yeah,
and it's all done under county inspection.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, good luck.
Is there anything else you guys need from me in order to move that one along, and any information I can give you right now?
I think we just need some
Yeah.
some things filled in, so move it out one thing, but have some blanks to fill in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if we can determine if it meets the state's definition of a replacement well would really help. That would take the burden off of us.
Chair, were you going to recommend that the board allow Julia to do the verification and go ahead and do the work? Or does it need to come back for another board meeting?
No, I think she can do it. I don't have a problem with that, do you?
I make a motion that we allow Julia to go ahead and do all the necessary investigation, applications, paperwork, and other docs, and go ahead and set it up for approval.
You have a problem with that, Jim?
Yeah, I won't second it.
I'll second that.
Well,
you, Peter.
yeah, it's not really an action item,
Yeah.
no.
You're right, it's not an action item, it's a discussion item. And I'm happy to bring it back next month as, what
I
I
would
wanna.
really like to know the definition of a replacement well, because we're gonna run into this constantly, so.
Okay, maybe we need to
And
clear
he,
that
you
up and
know,
bring
he
it
said
back.
he's not, you know, it's not like he's gotta have this next week, so, you know, we meet again at the end, next month.
And we'll fill in the radius area with the definition of the replacement.
I don't see it in N722, the executive order.
Yeah.
The definition of replacement?
Yeah, I've never seen anything on that either, but
Maybe-
sometimes it helps to defer to the county watershed protection because they follow all the state mandates. So.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll see what the county's definition is then.
yeah.
All right. Well, if there's anything else you need on that, I'm available anytime to answer any questions about it. And I don't need it next week, but I'd like to move it along before next month.
Sure.
So.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
one might be mine too, so I can.
Oh, okay.
okay,
The Country Club Drive?
yeah. And that's, looks like a new well, not a proposed, or a replacement, half an acre foot per year for ornamental landscape of 0.2 acres.
Yeah, the only question I would have is what Jordan brought up, because I know what it's like there. If they're just drilling a shallow well to irrigate landscaping, and they get into that shallow aquifer, that is something we want to avoid.
Jordan, if you don't pierce below it, does it matter?
Below the,
Instead of, you talk about sealing it off so you're not mixing the two. If you never go deep and you're just in the shallow,
yeah,
does
this one, okay. Top of my head, the geology here is such that it's a relatively thin amount of alluvium that's present, and a 25-foot seal would probably get you through that and have you just in bedrock. So I expect this would be a bedrock well almost exclusively. And what I would like to see is a condition on the permit. I'd like to see the permit approved just as is, and because of the half-acre foot demand, and just on the condition that the shallowest alluvium that is directly connected to San Antonio Creek there is sealed off such that pumping from this well does not affect the southwest uppermost saturated zone vis-a-vis San Antonio Creek. And that would be in keeping with the GSP intention to not cause the undesirable result of pumping surface water.
Is this in the city limits?
No.
Okay. Well, because the city came up with some idea a number of years ago, they're not allowing any more wells in the city.
I don't believe it is in the city.
Okay, well, that's something
Yeah, look at,
that's something we need to find out. Part of Country Club is, and
yeah.
We'll do that right now.
and I'm not against it. When it dries up, it dries up, and that's it.
And again, maybe that's part of the process. Also, I need to get more familiar with is what the city's role is in any of these applications.
Yeah. I think this is outside of the city limits.
I guess we need that on the application too.
Or it's just, or I have an internal checklist of things I have to look at, like the shallow zone and city limits.
So here's the city limits, the orange line, or the purple line. This property is here. And then if I put put our basin on this as well, it's outside of the alluvial portion of the basin. So it's within OBGMA jurisdiction, outside of the GSA.
Is it outside the city of Ojai?
It's outside the city of
Okay.
Ojai. It's the sweet spot of
No man's land.
no, yeah, I don't wanna say no man's land because it is OBGMA jurisdiction.
Yeah,
Um,
but outside the GSP,
but
Lightly
outside of the
regulated.
GSP,
okay.
You're with very little oversight.
and it has the, you know, it would have the San Antonio Previous map is going through this property as well.
Okay.
So I would caution the OBGMA to approve a permit that could be a surface water diversion if it does not seal off the alluvium.
Well, I agree.
So
Okay.
the condition of sealing off the alluvium checks the box of GSP compliance, outside of the GSA, outside of city limits, and to the extent we're protecting surface water resources, it does that too.
Okay.
So I'm not a board member, I could not make a motion, but the motion.
Well, I would just say that if the.
We're not making a motion today.
The applicant would have to agree to those conditions.
Yeah,
Otherwise, they don't have to go through the GSP gauntlet.
is this one yours also? Do you know, did you have an idea of how deep you were planning to drill that well?
We were probably thinking in the 300-foot range,
So bedrock well.
but there'll be an exploratory test hole to, see what's going on. But I think all the OBGMA permits require a 50-foot sanitary seal, is that true?
So the county would require a 25-foot minimum, and we would just wanna ensure that 25 is fine as long as it's through the alluvium and into, under the bedrock.
So pending geologic review of cuttings and.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this one, I probably need to bring back in June also. Check all those boxes, write up some more conditions for them to comply with, and then, because it's a little quirky space here.
Okay. Any comments?
All right.
No, I think we could go through this and we can start to streamline these things, so.
That's my hope.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
Any comments by the public? I don't know if we have any, we lost everybody.
I'm just wondering what the next course of action is on that, if that's gonna have to wait a month for another board meeting, or we're gonna do something in between on it?
Before the next board meeting, I'll get some more information and I'll come up with a process for, it looks like there's different things I need to check into, like the boundaries, if it's in the city, if it's in the GSP area. And then,
For this particular
for
permit,
this
or-
particular one, I think it's gonna come back in, May to the board to take action on.
And the reason I should tell my client that it's not, they have to wait another month is because.
Because we're still working on our process. Because this is all kind of new.
With the new
With the new-
regulations.
Yes.
I was kind of under the assumption that this particular one was, like, it's in OBGMA, but outside of all the other boundaries, which was really streamline the permit.
Probably down the road, that will be true. We just have to get that process in place to make them more streamlined.
And I understand what you're saying. I mean, I think because you're under the 1.9, you're exempt from a lot of stuff,
Yep.
but you're not exempt from the geological impact. And so we still get to weigh in there. And this, you're in a unique situation. So, I mean, first time we've seen it, so it doesn't seem like just pushing it to May to answer a few questions doesn't seem that out of,
Well, I guess,
yeah,
Go back to the client with good
Yeah.
information, that's all.
well, I think if you, between now and then, if you reach agreement on the conditions, you know where you're gonna go, because we're not gonna deny it if you meet all the conditions we've asked for. So,
And you'll know when. Last Thursday of the month.
27th?
yeah, it's May 25th.
25th, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll know. I mean, Julia publishes the agenda a week at least before, so you'll have contact with her. Any other questions or comments on this? And then
It
what's
was really helpful for me to talk it all through, so thank you.
sure. Yeah, and it'd be helpful in the future to applicants, we can get this thing smoothed out. And then we wouldn't, our meetings could go back to 45 minutes.
Or 30.
Yeah. What is item D?
So this is, I was just looking at sort of my recent experiences, obviously at Casitas, and they have there's usually a consent calendar for things
Yes.
that would be ministerial and would go quicker. So that was one option I was considering, if you guys are open to it, is, for example, if there's a well permit that doesn't have any issues and it's straightforward, we could just have a consent calendar item on there, and like the financial reports, things like that, could just all go in one shot and just approve however many meeting minutes.
Yeah.
Typically are on consent calendar as well. So
We've
just
done
to
that in
create
the
another
past.
category,
Yeah.
to breeze through things.
Yeah. No, we've done that in the past, so.
Okay.
All right, any other items, any other comments? If not, we are adjourned at 4:29. Thank you.
Okay, so there's the PDF.
When you talk to Matt Levere, did he talk to you about the election office, trying to get a hold of somebody in
Well, no, I talked to the election office a while ago. How long ago did